All over. I mean, how are you both feeling?
What's it been like? 2-3 days now? I'm starting to feel alright now. Something I always forget is like the last day or two of the race, you're kind of idealising when you can finally stop and lie down and rest, but the reality is you're just so uncomfortable. You don't really, once you do stop, everything keeps on aching for like a day or two, and it's quite painful.
So, you, Joe?
Yeah, I'm coming around sort of faster than I hoped, which is very good. Definitely faster than, say, Tour Te Waipounamu or something like that. But when the swelling goes down, I notice a few, like I got a pretty bruised up ankle. I remember dabbing a foot and just like having shooting pains when I did that. So yeah, just a few things being uncovered with the recovery, but more or less like the energy levels and everything's coming back fast with some good quality eating and a lot of sleep.
Were you expecting that?
Oh, we joked about it before.
We joked about it. We thought that'd be a great result, 1 and 2. But
Yeah.
I mean, I knew Joe was of pretty top end caliber, but I didn't think I had that in me.
Well, I did though, because there was a lot of pre-race hype about internationals and things, and I noticed that there was not a lot of Rufus name dropping going on. So I made sure when anybody was asking me about who I was worried about, who was going to be fast, I made sure I mentioned Rufus, because I don't know, I've been following what he's done for the last year, and I know, well, I've done a savage race with him before, the Great British Divide, so I know what he's capable of. So I knew it could be a possibility for sure that something like that could unfold.
I knew I was in pretty good shape and form and everything else. I just didn't know how that would stack up to all the competition that was turning up. Usually, like, my preparation is pretty chaotic, and I don't have the time to sort of rest and eat and all that sort of stuff coming into it properly. Whereas, yeah, this time round, a bit of a change of dynamics at home. I'm the stay-at-home dad, so wasn't stressed with work and everything else, and managed to just put some solid time into being rested and prepared and ready on that start line, which I think made a huge amount of difference actually, not having like coming into it with fatigue and everything else.
So let's do a little unpack of the race, shall we? You know, like from the start. For a start, bloody Joe drops a bottle. Talk us through that.
Thankfully, I didn't take Mark Watson and the rest of the crew out. I felt really bad about that. It was an amateur mistake. I drop a bottle. I was sort of with Rufus at the front there, but I just decided to drop back and get it. It's early days, and we were still in the drafting zone, so the pace wasn't too hot. So I just dropped back to the back of the bunch, grabbed my bottle, and then just sat in, and then basically just sat at the back of the pack until we'd gone through the Collingwood Beach section, and then it was the non-drafting zone, and I was just filming, having a chat on my GoPro, and I look up, and there's about 20 people in between Rufus and I. And then I just see Rufus just pull to the front and then just go straight out the front door. And I remember talking on the GoPro at the time, oh yeah, that's Rufus gone. Rufus is just buggering off the front here. And then I was like, he's not really the sort of guy to, like, he's not just, like doing tactics or anything, or just having a go and seeing who's following or anything. He's just setting a pace which he thinks he can hold, and he's just off for the day. And then, so it didn't take long for me to be like, oh shit, put the camera away, let's go, I got to keep up with this guy.
I wasn't really sure how the race was going to play out here. I've not actually done that much racing in New Zealand. My previous experience was in Europe. I'd done a bunch, and what they normally do is just, from the start line, it's just max effort until you blow up, basically. And I was like, well, that's what we'll do. And we'd been drafting to Collingwood, and then it was a pretty casual pace, and I was sort of I had a bit of like, I think, pent up sort of nervous energy which I needed to get out, and as soon as we got off the beach I was like, alright, I'm just gonna put my head down and do a pace that I know it's fast but I can hold for a long time. And I just went for it, and then I think I never looked back, and then at about Takaka I was sort of put my head over my shoulder, and it was a big long road and I couldn't see anyone behind me. I was kind of shocked, and then once I knew like I had that lead and there was no one right behind me, it kind of spurred me on to keep that going. So I entered the Ramika and just went flat out, knowing I had some good sort of mountain bike skills that might sort of increase my gap a little bit, and just kept it up as well for the rest of the day, really.
What are you thinking there at the end of the first day?
I was thinking we'd nailed it, actually. Like, I didn't really ever want to turn up or set up to sleep any later than 2, because it meant that, like, say if you get to bed at 3 or 4, you've only got a couple of hours before the sun's up. So I was always conscious of wanting a good amount of sleep every night to recover, and so you could go fast the next day.
Yeah, unlike Rufus, I'm a bit of a numbers guy, and I'd done a bit of research, so we were just ticking the boxes perfectly for me. I mean, I was about 10 minutes or so, 15 minutes behind Rufus the whole day, but we'd just ticked off, Takaka. Just rolling through Takaka, bang on 2 hours from race start. At 10, I think, and then Tupperware at 2 p.m, and then Murchison 8 p.m, or just before.
That was bang
for
on
the resupply. 10 minutes to spare. Got there. Woo! Not easy. And then Boyle at 2 a.m, which was just the pace I wanted to set, and I knew I wanted to do, and I was just really impressed that whole first day, to be honest, with Rufus' speed, because I was like, I could bridge up and catch him, and then I'd just see my numbers, like my power meter, it'd be pushing up over 300 watts, and I was like, nah, I can't afford to push that hard. Thankfully, at the pace that I was happy to do a 19-hour shift at, I wasn't losing him, he wasn't pulling away. So I was just surprised. I was like, we're very evenly paced right now, and it is a pretty intense pace, but I'm pretty sure I can wake up and do it again. I actually rolled through after Rufus had led the whole day. I passed him coming down.
Minutes from it, eh?
Yeah, Lewis
minutes
passed.
away.
He's on the side of the state highway putting knee warmers on. And so I took the glory that day, even though he'd set the pace. I rolled into the Boyle Village first at 2 a.m, right on schedule. So the first day was a huge success. And the biggest thing was that we were both like, wow, we've gapped the back, like third and backwards by, like, I don't know, we had half an hour up our sleeves, which was pretty awesome. We were both pretty excited about it.
Felt pretty good too.
Yeah.
We didn't feel knackered from what was a big day.
Yeah, I wasn't worried that I'd push too hard.
Just a quick one. How are your legs, mate?
Definitely pretty sore. I think I waited too long to put knee warmers on. They're probably going to be really sore in the morning. But
How's the head?
everything else is pretty good, actually. Yeah, surprisingly. I don't know what's going on. I'm having a great day. Yeah, then we just had a big box of food to get into, and knew that we had enough time to get a decent sleep in as well, and just do it all again the next day.
Yeah.
Did you have a feed when you got up as well?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I was still, that first day, when I was on the bike, I didn't really eat much. I always struggled to eat that first day. It was mostly just, when I got to resupplies, it was just liquids really, and a can of creamed rice. So when I got in, I was starting to get a bit hungry, but I couldn't eat a huge dinner. I had a big one planned, but only probably got halfway through it, and then similar in the morning, sort of maybe 3/4 of what I'd planned to eat. But from there on, the appetite got better and better each day. But yeah, it was good to wake up and have food ready to go.
Yeah, I had a stacked box, and I didn't really want to leave any of it behind, so I did my best at getting through that. And then I had a lot of capacity on my bike, and I ended up just loading it right up. You know, I took, so much that I could have gone for days in the end. But Better to be safe than sorry. And it was a tough zone to be carrying extra as well. That Hope single track is really strenuous, carrying your bike, lifting your bike over things. Obviously the damper hiker bike, I was carrying several kgs extra food that I didn't really need in the end, but you never know what's going to happen, you know, it could rain, you could get caught. So yeah, I don't regret taking that much food.
It's easy to panic with the food in mind, isn't it? Like the fear of running out of food in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
I feel like you always overpack.
Yeah.
I always get to the end of these things and I've always got something in my bag that I've carried from the very big, like this time I had like a cookie time. I hadn't touched it the whole way down the island. It was still in my bag at the end.
Emergency cookie time.
Yeah.
I had loads of stuff, but I think I would use more energy stressing about running out of food than it takes to cut the excess food around. So.
And as you say, like anything, you could get caught out by snow and have to camp out, and you need that food then.
Yeah.
So it's not worth not taking it for the sake of being a bit lighter.
And to counteract my fear of lack of calories with this race, which was my main sort of fear, the resupply gaps, I was bringing freeze-dried meals. And so like night 2, for example, I'd fill up, going through the Craigieburn single track, I filled up at a creek with just cold water, and then 1 hour later I'd get to Carswell Village, open up a backcountry meal and just sit there, take 10 minutes to eat that. It was like a bit of a debrief time at the end of the day, and it was just like 800 calories of just good savoury food that I could rely on, and that went well for the first 2 nights. So I ended up buying another 2 of those when I was in Methven, and I basically just had finished every night with a freeze-dried meal to make sure I got those, which would have helped when I was skipping resupplies and things. I've got a lot for those freeze-dried meals to thank them for. Oh, it's too much resupply.
So Boyle, when you sort of jokingly threw your bike over the fence and said, and Joe goes into the lead for the first time, what was the story there?
Oh. Just like that, he's in the lead.
Oh! Position swap.
I would be first over the swing bridge, and to be honest, I thought I'd be stronger up the Hope. Like,
yeah,
no offense, but I was like, oh no, I could, like, there's a lot of just muscling around and like just, I don't know, he's a good technical rider as well, and I'd also recce'd that section, and it was the only section of the course I'd recce'd, so I'd done 30 k's of the course, and that was only like a month prior, and I was like, well, I know where I'm going here, and I'm feeling pretty good after a good 4 hours sleep, so I was happy to jump in front of Rufus, and then I prefer to ride by myself, just to be in my own rhythm and like not be overthinking someone's pace or anything like that. So I jumped in front and then started pushing like quite hard along the single track, and as soon as we'd have to hop off, I'd be like sort of almost running up a creek bed and things like that, just trying to like, and then after about half an hour I was like, oh, that would have put a gap in for sure, and then I just stopped to fill up a drink bottle at a creek. Rufus just comes straight out of the single track, like, so he's about 15 seconds behind me or something, and I was like, oh shit, this is going to be a hard race.
It was crazy because we, like, when we were in the forest, we couldn't see each other.
Yeah.
And I was conscious of the fact that this was a strong section for you, so I was probably pushing quite a bit harder, thinking I can't let him get me too much. And like when you passed me after that fence and we went over the bridge, I took a wrong turn immediately and got stuck in all this bush, and I was like, oh god, he's just gapping me at this point. And then so I just went quite hard through that section, and then wouldn't see you for ages and ages, and then we'd get into an opening and I'd be like, oh, he's only 200 metres ahead.
I know, yeah.
I was just stoked every time.
I know, yeah, just a lot stronger than what I thought through there, and as soon as I'd be like, okay, I need to go this fast to get rid of you, it would just be an unreasonable speed that I wouldn't be able to complete a 1,300 kilometre race at. So I was like, this is it, I've just got to sit at this is my limit, and if he makes a mistake, or I just knew as soon as he'd keep those little, as soon as he could see me so often that it was just going to keep him there, like it would just be like mentally he knew he had the same speed, the edge on me.
Yeah, whenever someone stopped to get water, the next person would pass, and we'd
Yeah.
just be piggybacking for hours.
Yeah, basically not talking, just trying to beat each
Never
other.
riding together, just constantly.
Yeah. And then we made it out into the Huranui. We made good time through there. You know, we were at the Huranui swing bridge at like 11:30 that morning after a good 30 k's of tough single track. And then we crossed the big Huranui River together, you know, within eyesight, because it was quite deep and things. And we came together at that point, you know, and we rode the section east along the Huranui, and then the hike up to Lake Mason we did together. And we were just like, that was fast, you know.
Yeah.
And basically just took into the fact that we were first and second after this day and a half, and we were stoked, and like we were realistic that it's a long race and a lot can go wrong, but we were sort of having a joke like how amazing would it be if we could hold this to the end.
Yeah, it was such early days that I certainly didn't think that at least I had sticking still in me. We were sort of dreaming at that point of the dream result, weren't we?
Yeah.
But it was a promising start.
Yeah.
And, well, the Dampiers where the split emerged between us after being so closely paced for 2 days. I'd hit the tree earlier that morning through the Hope section, and shoulder was starting to hurt pretty bad at that point, so I could see him just edging away as I was sort of kept reshuffling my harness. And once we got to the top, I just went too far down. I didn't realise the track sidled after a small descent, so I did a really big descent and realised it was like, I thought this is just getting way too dangerous, we can't be going down here, and looked at the thing and realised I'd gone not too far, like not miles too far, but it was like super steep and just scree and bits of tussock, so it took me a while to hike back up and then sidle along, and I knew he'd just be long gone at that point. And then that was when the gap emerged.
Yeah, well, I was happy to see the gap because I felt like I was doing a lot of the hard graft because I'd made the gap, but I was spending so much time looking at my Garmin about following this red line and trying to find that crappy little sort of tussock track line.
Yeah.
And, you know, even climbing the Dampier, I wasted heaps of time because I overshot the traverse. I went to basically the peak. Did you see me way up there? And then I had to drop back down and then just kind of scurry across. And you like caught right back up, and I was like, oh my god, I had a lead, and then of course I was trying to hide going across the traverse, and then you just look across and see me and just went straight onto it.
I couldn't actually see you. I kept looking
really?
up, being like, he must. And that's why I kept thinking, like, he's absolutely gone.
Oh, you have got crap eyesight,
I
thankfully.
got crap eyesight.
Yeah. And then to see you drop over the descent behind me, I was like, oh, he's still going to see me, and we've got ages before the descent, and I'm not going to be able to pull away. And then, all of a sudden, you just disappeared. And I actually did think, like, shit, I hope he's okay, because there was some pretty gnarly riding. Like, I think most people would be just hiking that, but I was certainly,
wild,
I was jumping on my bike and riding anything possible. Anything with a slight downslope, I was just like, just jump on the bike and hope for everything to be the best. And then, by the time I got to the descending ridge, he was nowhere to be seen.
Oh, it was a bit sort of demoralising. Like, I was sort of keeping the energy up, knowing that I actually wasn't too far off Joe, and then when it got to the point where he was nowhere in sight and there was no reception, I couldn't tell how far he was. It was sort of like the motivation dropped a little bit, and I think that allowed the gap to get even bigger too, because there was a huge, 70k ride out on like a pretty rough farm track and lots of ups and downs, and I just got a bit fatigued through that section, and it was sort of all caught up with me a little bit.
So was that the last time you saw him?
Yeah, that was it.
You made that one wrong move. I absolutely made hay while the sun was shining. I was like, you beauty. That's all it took. And he could see me as well. He still stuffed it up.
I know. Well, I do find it amazing how much of it is psychological versus just what you eat or how much you sleep. Like, that thing of like knowing he'd really get to me and I couldn't bridge that. I just lost a lot of energy just knowing that versus if he was still in sight, I could probably keep pushing. It's just that difference of like the psychology you get into. But then, yeah, obviously from then on, it was sort of like checking what sections were coming up or riding through them and knowing like this is where he'll be strong or this is where I'm strong, and if it's a section where he's not strong and I am, I have to make the most of it. And the difference of sort of really knowing your competitor versus I didn't really know anyone else in the race. Quite an interesting aspect to have in an event like that.
Yeah.
When you know your competitor so well.
Yeah, I was the same. Like, it's almost like keep your enemies close type scenario, because once I couldn't see him, once I'd split, you'd think I'd feel better, but I was also just second guessing everything I was doing. Like, as soon as I made some time on the descent down Dampier, I sort of was confident with that. But then we're on that 70k section, which you said you lost motivation on.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, like, a lot of this is quite fast. There's some flat bits, and I know how strong Rufus is.
Yeah, I feel like these entire events are just about highs and lows, really. When you're on that high, there's not a problem in the world. Like, all your pains and niggles go away. You've got tons of energy. And then, yeah, you go into the next low and it all comes flooding back. But definitely still had some highs after that, regardless of the gap emerging. And most of the course you can't really check where the dots are, so you just think like, this is the section I'm going really well, I must be closing the gap a little bit, so you feel good about it, and it drives you to go that even faster again. But yeah, there's these sections also where you just really enjoy riding your bike. I think like that Craigieburn section through all the single track, I was just having a great time. I mean, I knew he was a lot better on a bike than me. He'd still be gapping me there anyway, but I was enjoying it nonetheless, and that spurred me on. And then I knew after that it was just 100 k's to Methven on pretty basic roads, and you have a huge resupply, so that things like that spur you on, knowing that like in 100 k's you've got food, whatever you want in a supermarket, all that sort of stuff. And it's just about sort of, for me, it's about having those little goals afterwards, and like, say I've got like some food on me or some couple of cans of Coke, it would be about like checking what the time is or the kilometres and giving yourself like a goal that like at this kilometre I'll have that Coke and I won't have it before then, so you have to get there as fast as you can to get that Coke. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Get high. You can run, but you can't hide. You can run, but you can't hide.
I knew that I'd only got the lead because of the hike, which scared me a bit, because I don't know, I was just really impressed with how strong Rufus was on the pedals, and I knew that the flatter it was, the stronger he was going to be. He's got an extremely aerodynamic bike, and he's just from training rides and things, I know that he's like extremely efficient when in the TT position. So any time it was flat, like I broke out and we started heading towards Methven and then around to Mesopotamia, and I was like, I've just got to do damage control because I think Rufus is going to gain through here. And so that spurred me on to push through Methven quite fast, because I'm like, well, if he's going to gain on the plains, I've just got to, make time on him and the resupplies. And I was never comfortable, that's for sure. I really wanted to get to Mesopotamia and started those next hiker bikes, and at that point I was like, oh, let's try and put the nail in the coffin and really like push over Bullock Bow and Stag Saddle. And I wanted to do that Stag Saddle descent in the light, force him to do it in the darkness, and then hopefully I'd have more than, a couple of hours gap. That was my big goal that day. So I sort of conserved a little bit, and then got to the hiking and then just started pushing really hard, because I'm good at walking up hills, and I did some training, like, running with weight vests on and things that I know Rufus didn't do. So I was really hoping to make some time there.
You camped at Tekapo, but you got going at about 6 o'clock, and knowing that there was nothing open there. Talk us through that little scenario.
Yeah, that was tough. I'd done the research, and I knew that Jakob was in Tekapo at about 8 to 8:30, so he had all the four squares and everything he needed open. But the earliest anything was open was about 6:30 or 7. So I'd arrived at Tekapo at about 1 a.m. and so I knew I was going to sleep till 5 or 5:30. And I saw you in the morning, nothing was open. and I had to make the tough decision that even though I'd gone already, I don't know, 20 hours I suppose, without resupply from Methven, I had to just use what I had left over and try and get to Otamatata. And I mean, I knew this because I'd done the research, so I had absolutely loaded to the hilt for this eventuality. If things all went well, then I would have to go all the way. And it's a big resupply, as Rufus said. He knows my weakness is needing a lot of calories to get this engine burning, eh? But turns out it was a good learning experience because I had, 3 bags of lollies and raro and stuff like that, and it was absolutely fine. Once you may be wanting savoury food, you may be wanting something a bit more wholesome, but if you just put your mind down, I just put my mind on it and said, this is what I've got. I've got lollies. It's not what I want, but it's all I'm going to have, and I have to keep this gap to Rufus. It was only like half an hour. I could have got a resupply, but I just wasn't willing to get, which shows you the respect I've got for the guy. I wasn't even willing to wait half an hour. I had to go. And actually I was so impressed that even though he did stag saddle in the dark and all that crap, I hadn't even made the gap any bigger. So I was like, this guy's not mucking around, and if I rest on my laurels one bit, I'm going to lose the race. So I just pushed, and I actually had a really good section to Otamatata. I just pushed really hard, was really on my game. As soon as I'd hit a creek, I'd be straight off, fill up the drink bottles, roll in it, try and get the core temp down, straight back on the bike, push, next creek, do it, and it's really efficient, and got to Otamatata in good time, and actually made up, in a non-resupply section, I'd put an hour or so into them.
Yeah, I felt like I'd had a really slow night getting over those saddles, and I'd mistakenly thought the first saddle was stag saddle, so having to do a second saddle was pretty brutal to the mind. And I think also going over stag saddle was I was trying to make up time on my big mistake. I just did something to my knee just because I'm not that strong a hiker. Like Joe said, I didn't do the practice. And I think coming down the other side, I just sort of did something and I felt the knee go, and it was pretty sore, but it seemed to be fine on the bike. But I got to Tekapo anyway. Managed to get in at that cafe. It was the only thing open, but it was perfect. Just had some sausage rolls and coffee and all that stuff that Joe was missing out on.
That would be nice, Joe.
Yeah. And felt really, really good, really motivated, and thought I'd just shoot out of there and just put the hammer down to Otamatata, thinking I might be able to close it a little bit.
Where did that motivation come from then? Because you'd already said you'd lost it earlier.
The sausage roll.
It was honestly the food, I think. Yeah. Just getting in somewhere, being in a warm cafe for a little bit, and then having warm food.
Fats though, as well as sugar.
Oh, it's amazing what that does to just you come out of there like all your pains and niggles are sort of gone. Yeah. You feel incredible, but I know that these highs don't last for long. And it was quite a way to Otamatata, so I was just trying to keep that up and just blasting along the canal ways. And then as the day got on and we went over that riverbed road for however long that was starting to think oh man, I'm starting to fail again here. And then for me, one of the biggest problems was actually I know the weather was, everyone says it was pretty ideal, but I don't do well in the heat, and it really started cooking that day, and that really did a number on me, I think, especially coming up through Black Forest Station, where you're in that valley and there's no wind and everything's just reflecting heat on you. I was absolutely cooking, and pretty much the whole ride I was pretty efficient at just, I would only ever stop for resupply or to sleep. I'd literally never stop otherwise. You go over a saddle, I wouldn't stop at the top, I'd just get straight on the bike and ride down. But that was one of the times I just had to pull over for 10 minutes and try and get the temperature down. That was one of 2 times I stopped. And then got to Otamatata and in a pretty bad way, and just really took a minute to take the shoes off, dry the socks, and just get a recheck on everything, have a look at the dots, and realise that Joe still wasn't miles away. He was sort of probably, I think, a few hours up on me at that point. I thought, there's still a chance, and But during that ride, my knee had started to develop a bit more as well. But got a big resupply and then pushed on from Otamatata thinking I'll get over the Hawkton Range to the next resupply and hopefully sleep there and shoot off in the next morning. But wasn't long into that next section when the knee just blew up really, and I was having to just push up every climb. And had another look at the map and realised there was a hut, the Ida Railway hut, sort of halfway along the range there, and thought that'll be me for the night, because whenever I get an injury or something coming on, I think to myself, I just need to sleep and it'll be alright in the morning hopefully. And I got there and it was quite funny actually. I pulled into the hut and I could see a couple of trucks outside, so I thought, there must be some people here, hopefully there's still a bunk. I opened the door and they'd put the fire on, so it was real cosy as well, because this was middle of the night kind of thing. And sort of scouting around trying to see if there's a bunk. I was that annoying guy with the headlight on, everyone's asleep, and this face just pops up in front of me. He's like, is it Rufus? I was just like, what? I was just blown away. Like, how do you know? Like, I think I answered him quite aggressively, like, how do you know that?
Get high. You can run, but you can't hide. You can run, but you can't hide.
But no, I had an amazing, probably a good 4 hours sleep there, I think.
Cool.
And then got up and the knee felt alright for the first little while in the morning and just pushed on. And I was lucky enough at the next place I got there too early. I was about 6:30. It didn't open until 7:30, but the guy was pushing his bins out and saw me and said, I'll open up shop for you. And I knew Joe had missed out on that resupply. He was long gone.
Well, like Rufus said, he doesn't stop, and when he's literally means that, like riding with him and racing with him in the past, I've in the Great British Divide, if I'd stop for a piss, I'd turn around and he'd be angry, like he is one efficient human being when it comes to these races. And so every time it motivated me, every time I stop to do anything, I know that Rufus isn't going to stop there, but I'm a bit more of a stopper and a bit more of an eater and a bit more of a so it was on my mind the whole time, like I can't screw anything up, because he rides fast, but he also doesn't stop. So it's a double whammy there. And also, the other thing I know is that he'd be dealing with injuries and like me, like ruined feet and all that stuff. But he's just a savage that it's not really going to slow him down. So if there was another competitor, I might think, if it's going to rain on him, or if he's had a crap sleep, or if it's cold up in the Hawkton Range, he might slow down. But knowing Rufus so well, I was never resting on my laurels. I was like, he's going to be full speed, doesn't matter. So.
And Joe's a big eater. I think you said that in that little preview we did.
Yeah.
So how much of your strategy was based around knowing his strategy?
Well, yeah, especially Tekapau onwards, and I knew he'd missed that supply. But then I was really impressed, because I got to Otamatata and I think he'd get me even more. And knowing that I'd eaten and he hadn't, I was like, oh man, he's delving deep. He's on another level this time. Like, he doesn't need a resupply. I was like, what the hell's going on?
That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah, and so when he missed the next resupply, I was still thinking like, he's going to be suffering. But having learnt from the day before, I was thinking, well, he knows how to push on, and I knew he had a lot of capacity for food, so he would be probably holding a lot from. He would have done a big resupply in Otamatata.
Was that your last resupply?
Otamatata, yeah, but I did actually get a night's sleep in Otrahua at a backpackers called the Crow's Nest, and he had a few nibbles there that I rung him and booked the accommodation and said, what time does the pub close? And he rung them up, and the pub like, nah, far too late, we're not going to serve that guy. The accommodation, I had a few nibbles, but it definitely wasn't a resupply, and nothing nutritious that I'd like. And I'd also had a very interestingly crap sleep there. It was the only sleep that I had on a bed, but it was basically a wasted 4 hours for a number of reasons. I was absolutely dying for Lawrence, basically.
were you thinking of the end? Why do you think you had a bad sleep?
Basically, I had a really bad, my nose was just fully blocked with dried blood, and I really struggled to, I couldn't breathe through that, and then I was drooling everywhere. And then also, I'd lost my lip balm earlier that day, coming over the Otamatata station, and my lips were just so sore, so I'd keep getting up and then like putting cold water on them, and just like, I was like, and then I also had a room that was really hot, and lights were coming through the windows, there was no curtains, so it was just all of these things compacting. I finally found out that the cream that I used to recover my skin on my backside worked for my lips. So that like saved the day basically, because my lips were just, I'd never felt this sort of pain before. They were just burning, and it was like, there's no way I can sleep like this. And the next time I could get lip balm was literally going to be Lawrence, which is 160 kilometres away over the bloody Lammerlaws. So I was like, I'm ruining this race because my lip balm fell out of my pocket. But yeah, thankfully the arse cream did its job, and yeah, so I in hindsight I should have probably just woken up and started riding, but I just sat there and I just tried to sleep, and I was like, and I just wasn't motivated enough. I should have really just got out the door then, but I almost made the matter worse, because I sat around for 4 hours, then started going in the dark at 3:30 after 4 hours of stop there in Otrahua, and I was just falling asleep on my bike and just felt absolutely terrible. So I hadn't had proper food, I hadn't slept, and I was basically just and it was just rail trail for a while, which is just mind numbing, and I'm just staring at the head torch, just like swerving all over the place. And then actually on the first climb up towards the the rough range, I think it is, I had to just keel under a rock, and I got 20 minutes snooze under there, which was just, that 20 minutes did a whole lot more than the 4 hours at the Backpackers.
Amazing. How do you feel to be, taken down by the arse cream?
That's an impressive hack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was desperate times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get high. You can run, but you can't hide. You can run, but you can't hide.
What was that whole experience like?
I'd say for me, that's an interesting one. It's quite different to any of the other ultra sort of bikepacking races I've done in terms of the terrain it crossed. It was so much more off-road, I guess. I mean, a lot of them say they're off-road, but they're just on like sort of long-forgotten gravel roads and stuff like that, whereas this was properly going through backcountry, like hiking over mountains on walking trails which had been probably not walked in a long time, and it just felt a lot more epic than stuff I'd done in the past, and a lot more rewarding, having sort of, it feels like going through the South Island and actually like ticking off a lot of pretty cool off the road stuff, really.
I obviously loved the challenge of the technical side. I even I think I enjoyed the event even more because of the hiking and the technical side. You'd get to the bottom of Stag Saddle or whatever it was, and it was like a cool experience to put the bike on my back and start walking, and it used some different muscles, and it was like a mental rest or a mental change at least, so I was absolutely loving it, thriving, and it wasn't like bearing me down like I think some other people. The route really takes its toll on people, those climbs and things like that, but for me it was like keeping everything fresh, and a lot of the other events, as Rufus said, that I'd done had just been working on my pedalling, like the Tour Te Waipounamu, it's just pedalling, and it's just so much, in my opinion, more brutal, because for 19 to 20 hours a day you just have to sit there pedaling, whereas this was like stunning vistas, hike a bike, crossing rivers, single track, it was like I was just having a ball, and it was much more of a sort of intrepid experience.
Yeah, and like I think I said before, very rewarding for someone, like, if you've got skills on a mountain bike. Like Joe says, it's not just about how fast or how long you can pedal for. It's there was a lot of times we made up for people with mountain bike background, which was really cool. It wasn't certainly wasn't like a gravel bike event or anything. It was you had to have a mountain bike and you had to know how to ride it. And if you could, then a lot of time could be made in a huge amount of sections. And a lot of fun could be had too. There was some, like through the Lammerlaws, that Serpent Scenic Reserve, that was just like this farm trail, but it was like a natural flow trail. It was just a lot of fun to ride. It was a bit of a mental perk in the middle of that sort of barren land.
Yeah. And massive highlights for me, like just growing up hunting and tramping on the Southern Alps, and like, you know, I'd done a lot of tar hunting up the Macaulay River and things like that, and at one point I got to the top of the Stag Saddle, and it was like right on sunset, and I was overlooking those places that I had, you know, all through university and things, been like hiking up and doing all that, and I was like, wow, what a position to be in now. I'm doing a crazy mountain bike race and I'm in the lead, and it's sunset, and it's just, you can just see the Godley Valley, and this amazing descent, one of the more rewarding descents I've had, looking over Lake Tekapo and stuff like that. It's like, it was a pretty, that in particular was a big moment for me, because I knew that whoever got to Tekapo first had won the race. And I knew when I was at the top of Stag Saddle and I was in the lead and I was up on the record, there was a good, it was still a long way to go, but I was like, wow, this is amazing, you know. I've got this huge big descent, and it's mine to screw up now.
Get high. You can run, but you can't hide. You can run, but you can't hide.